talk to you today about a training activity that we've done with our leaders to unlock academic integrity, training for tutors. So, to begin, go over it.
Yeah, these are the learning outcomes that we have for you today. So, just briefly, wanted to touch on those, talking about the importance of emphasizing the academic integrity piece throughout tutor training, making sure that you'll be able to facilitate the activity if you choose to back when you go to your institutions and with your tutors. And talking about the academic integrity policies that we have at our different institutions and what the similarities or possibly differences might be. And as we keep going for this, wondering what you all are, what sparked your interest in this session and what you hope to gain from this?
What was interesting to me was that I work in a writing center. I'm a writing tutor and a learning specialist, and I wanted to know how this would apply to the concept of plagiarism and encouraging students. That's really the reason. Original work.
And the things you all wanted to gain from this?
The policies for take-home tests with responsible tutors, not in school tutoring, but on private tutoring that they would be off-getting.
Yeah.
I had an issue when I was training a tutor and he plagiarized. And I went all French on him. That means I banned him from the tutoring training program, and I strongly suggest that he was banned from being a tutor, and maybe it would be better if I had handled it a different way. So maybe you can help me with that.
Thank you. We're excited that you're here.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Okay. So briefly, we're going to run through what you should expect for the next 45 minutes. Icebreaker, we're going to go through some fast facts, get you a little bit more familiar with our institution and what we are working with our tutors and leaders. Talking about how we developed this, why we developed it, who we collaborated with to develop the activity, talking about actually facilitating it, our success stories with the information, and then making sure we get into that discussion so that we can continue that with each of you and what you want to gain from this.
Yeah. So, we try to be very intentional with all the training that we do, and so we have an icebreaker that we're going to do, because if this is training, of course we're going to do an icebreaker. And so we wanted to not only give you the academic integrity piece, but we've also got a bonus activity that you get to take back and use with your leaders if you'd like. And something to know throughout this presentation, we call all of our tutors at Florida Gulf Coast University instructional support leaders. So for the rest of the presentation, if you hear the word leader, that's synonymous with tutor. So it includes our SI leaders and the leaders that work in our drop-in lab. So they're all leaders. And so this is an activity that we've used with them when we want them to go into the classroom and help students understand the importance of creating a study group. And so what we're going to have you all do is go through this activity so you can see how we facilitate that and give that material to our leaders to use when they are out and about. So, in your little packet, you should have a key to success compass. For the leaders, we used it as staying the course, because it's something that they use in their course to stay on course in that class. And so we've used it as the key to success, because that's what we found with our theme here today. But so what you're going to do is you're going to take your compass, everyone should have one, and on the back is your facilitation guide. So if I'm screwing up, you will know. But right here on the front, you've got your compass, and you're going to mingle around the room and find 4 individuals that you will fill out your compass with their name and contact information, so that you've established some networking and people you can contact that you have questions or you want to just bounce ideas off of. You know that they're from a different institution, so you can reach out and see what they're doing. But this gives you a little networking piece to take with you when you go back to your institution of people you met at the conference. And so if you want to maybe get up and get their name and contact information, and the thing to know is that if you put somebody on your north direction, they're going to put your name on the north direction so that you coincide with that direction. Same for east, west, and south.
I'm directionally challenged.
Number 6.
Yeah, we do. In several states, we have 5 campuses.
And mine has actually a B.
So I guess we're sharing.
That would be the other one. I know,
The online tutoring there too.
Yeah, because my wife was sitting and
A lot of
it's the one that used to be, yeah, which back was a lot of
And Ronnie said that.
And once you get into yourself, I think you have Okay, so you can start making your way back to your seat. Really? You're fine. A great day.
I got a black and white one.
I'm the coordinator of our.
Me too.
So for the sake of time, we're not going to go through the additional steps in this, but what you can have your leaders or your tutors do would be to have them meet their person that they had from North. And then you have them ask questions and mingle that way. Because that initial piece is getting that information, and then they start to ask questions, find out, if it's a study group, it's when's the best time to meet. If it's just with your leaders, it's when would you like to go grab coffee? And figuring out times for them to meet up and discuss that. And so I've got some questions you can ask during those steps, but it gives them a chance to meet with somebody they might not have, because we encourage them to reach out there outside of the people that they already know. So, thank you all for participating. Hopefully that is a useful bonus activity that you can take with you. Just to run through a few fast facts about Florida Gulf Coast University. So we are, as I mentioned, we have instructional support leaders. They work in SI and our drop-in tutoring labs. We currently don't do any appointments, and so we have just the drop-in and SI. We are in Fort Myers, Florida, so over on the west side. And our undergraduate enrollment is 13,429. We have a graduate enrollment of 1,000, so we're right there on that 14,000 midpoint. Our student population breakdown is 92% are from Florida. We have 7% from other states and 1.5 that are international. And then our average SAT score is 1569, and our high school GPA currently is 3.04. So.
And this is our Center for Academic Achievement. So we have our director, Stacy Parker, and we have an executive secretary that we have in our office, as well as 2 office assistants. And then we have our 2 programs. We have our academic retention program, and there are 3 academic retention coordinators that carry out these different programs. And the Eagle Success Program is a way to get students academically engaged with our university. The academic coaching is another opportunity for students to come in and have those one-on-one meetings with our retention coordinators. Our coordinators also facilitate those student success workshops for our students, and they go into classes when professors are absent and will present on a topic that the professor sees a need for their student. And so they will present on study strategies, they will present on note-taking skills, whatever the professor would like to see for their students and their growth and development. We also have our instructional support program. We have the assistant director, myself, and Elise, the coordinator, and we also have our instructional support leaders. We have about over 50 instructional support leaders on staff, and our instructional support leaders serve in our instructional support tutoring labs, which is a drop-in lab in multiple locations that we offer, and they also serve as supplemental instruction leaders. And so our labs are open Monday through Friday, about 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock on main campus. We're open in housing from 6 to 9, and we also have Study Sunday, as we call it. So we have a lab in housing on Sunday night as well. So this is the breakdown of our center.
So the way that this activity was developed. So one of the important things is that CRLA certification. We are working on that, and one of the essential pieces is the ethics part, or thinking about the plagiarism, as you had mentioned as well, and just the ethics of the tutoring program in our center. And so this was one way that we felt we could address that training topic through this activity that we created and facilitated. Another piece is that it's a part of our university mission, so that lifelong learning aspect, the academic spirit that we have at FGCU, and so it continues to coincide not only with the ethics of CRLA, of our tutoring program, but as well as our university as a whole. And so we wanted to continue that theme throughout our tutoring training as well. And so then, this is my first year working in the Center for Academic Achievement, and so this was kind of a brainchild because as I was meeting the leaders and going through training with them and really, probing them to find out, what it is that you're trying to get out of this position, we had a lot of questions about, why can't I help with homework? And so we have to provide context to why we would have them not do something, and so helping them understand that gray area of what they can do and what they can't do in a tutoring session, and figuring out how they can be successful in getting a student to get to that independent thought. Because as we all know, that is the core of what we're trying to do with our services. We want our students to be developing an understanding for how to do something on their own, and so that leader is assisting them. So what better way to do that than to create an activity that can help break down an understanding of what might be a violation of academic integrity without them even knowing it. And so we sought out collaboration with our Office of Student Learning, or Office of Student Conduct, sorry. And so we discussed with them things that they've seen that have been common policy violations that have come through their office. And so you're asking about plagiarism. That has been a common policy violation with turn it in, or with whatever they're finding. The professors are seeking them out saying, this is what's happening, we need to address it. We've also had them provide context for some of our scenarios, because I just started developing things that I thought could happen, and then we needed them to verify if that was something that actually has happened or they could see a student doing. And then whether or not it was actually a policy violation too. And then using this activity across campus. So we've got multiple areas on our campus that are now using this activity because they find it valuable not only in a tutoring setting, but just for students to know. And so the Dean of Students Office is taking it out and using it when they are brought into a classroom. You know, a professor can say, I'd like you to come in and talk about academic integrity, so they're using this activity. We've got our honors mentors, they use it in their training, and so it's used multiple areas on campus.
So how we've seen it play out. So one of the ways that we seek feedback from our tutors is after tutor training, we will do an assessment, and so we will ask them and give them scenarios and say, what would you do in this situation? And we're finding that they are answering appropriately based on the training that we are doing with this activity. So they're getting a better feel for that gray area, as Elise had mentioned. In addition to that, the observations and self-evaluations that we do, academic integrity is integrated into both of those, and so we have them self-evaluate and touching on that academic integrity piece. Did they have, a student that did ask them about helping them with graded work? If they did, how did they handle those situations? What did they do? And the observations as well. If we ever see that, we make note of that and how they handled it and talk it out with them during our observation debrief meetings. And so it's something that's continually woven throughout their experience as a leader.
And then we have a leader success story where we have found that, okay, our training did something, because I had a leader come in and she was, not hysterical, but kind of hysterical. And she said, I just need to talk to you. And I said, come on in, what's going on? And she said, I think I have a problem. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that. And so she was in a situation where she had a group project, and the group they have to meet with constituents and then come back and report those meetings and do interviews with them. And she said, my group, we failed to go to our next constituent meeting because she's on maternity leave, and so we can't get in touch with her to complete our interview. And my group wants to turn in our one we did before and just use her signature on that one, and I know it's wrong and I don't know what to do. And so we know that she's having internal conflict because she said, I know at training we talked about this, and so we know that our training is sinking in even for our leaders. So they're students as well, and so we're having them tell our students what they should and should not be doing as far as academic integrity goes, but they're also using it for themselves. And so having that aha moment where she was like, I want to come talk to you about this because what should I do? I know it's wrong, but I don't know how to, I've gone to the professor, but the professor didn't really give me much guidance. And so figuring out what we can do and what steps we can take. So that was, for us, we felt, okay, our training is sinking in because it's coming up in their academic lives. Okay, so now we're going to get to the activity. We've built it up from here. So your blue piece of paper is the activity that we give our students. And I'm going to go through a condensed version of it. I'm not going to have you go through the whole thing because we do have them go through and rank them individually, and then we have them go through the group consensus. But so what you have on the front page, there should be a grid that has all of the scenarios. And so what we ask our leaders to do is to go through those scenarios, read through each one, and individually rank which one they think is the most unethical and which one they think is the least unethical. Because we talk about, cheating is cheating, and you can't have a little bit of cheating or a lot of cheating, you just have cheating. And so we have them go through and rank what they feel those situations are. And this can be it's a beautiful thing. When they start coming up, well, I don't think that would be too bad. And you're going, oh, you don't. Okay, we're going to work on that. And so as you're reading through those, they may or may not pertain to your campus, but you can always tailor them. We use FGCU because it's used for our school. But we do have one, so Everybody works with FERPA, right? Right? So we have one that when talking with the Dean of Students Office, I believe it's J, okay, it's the last one. Yes, so J, we do not have our leaders report back to a professor on whether or not a student has attended their services. Because we want to make sure that because the professor can control that grade, they aren't supposed to know if they've been going to tutoring to offer additional extra credit, because not every student is given that opportunity if they haven't been going the whole time. So that's just something that we have at our institution, that we ask our leaders that should maintain, that integrity between the student and the leader. And then at the end of the semester, if the professor wants to know who attended after grades have been posted, then we are happy to report that out, because we want them to know that if they referred a student, then we want them to know that they were there. But during that process where that grade could be impacted on whether or not they showed up for tutoring, when somebody else was never told, well, if you go to tutoring, I'll give you extra credit, we don't want that to be, that to come back on us. So we have our leaders. So that was one that the Dean of Students Office was, I don't think this is a positive evaluation. Well, it's not really with you all, that's with us. So, but as you're going through those, we have you go through and rank them. And then what we have them do is they have to come together in small groups and reach a consensus. And so it's not a trick, but we give them a few minutes to kind of start deliberating, and that's where those juices start flowing, and people will play, devil's advocate for certain ones, and some people will think that one was more unethical than another. And what we say at the end is we don't ever make them actually reach the consensus. It's about discussing them and letting them know that there's none of these things that are not unethical. We want you to be aware that even something that's minute could be unethical or violate policy. And so we just want them to know that, and it's kind of that eye-opener and that aha moment. But then, again, we know it sinks in because they start to think about it. And so after we go through that, we have processing questions about, was it difficult to reach a consensus? Do you feel like you would have ever gotten to that consensus? What challenges did your group face? And, did it make a difference in how you ranked them? What were some of the differences in the responses? Did any particular activity or scenario stand out to you? And so that was always really enlightening, because we want to know, what was a shock to you, or which one, do you think comes up in sessions more often? And then did you find what was the easiest part? And if you didn't talk much, why didn't you talk during that situation? And how might you relate this to your leadership role or as a group? And so that last question is when we bring it back and we talk to them about how can you bring this into your session? And so, when we're going through observations, our observation form, they all receive a copy of it so they know what's coming that we're looking for. And so when we get to that question of did they ask about graded work? If they say, well, I can't help you with graded work, we always have to correct them and help them understand that by telling a student that I can't help you with your homework, that student is going to be like, well, why did I come here? We don't want that. And so we have to break that down, and we always ask them to develop ways that they would explain why they can't help with that graded work. And so we have them go through different scenarios with us and feedback on how would you tell that student. And so some of our favorites are, I can't go through this problem with you, but let's find a problem that's similar to it, or let's break down these concepts. Can you pull out a concept from this problem that you're not understanding, and let's work through that and see if that helps you apply that information to that problem, because we want you to know how to do it when you go home and I'm not sitting with you. That's the end goal. And so walking through those scenarios and how they would rephrase that question or rephrase that answer to say, I can help you with your homework, and getting them to that point.
All right. So we'd like to open it up for discussion. We really want to facilitate that at this point. We've given you the activity, we've given you the information, but we want to know from you, what issues, if you have faced any issues at your institution, what sort of issues have you faced? Are there any policies or expectations that you already have in place for your tutors? And then any questions or any discussion that has been sparked?
I have some questions. First of all, B, I actually did this. When I was an undergrad, I completely faked a plant assignment because I didn't want to do it. And I wrote very convincing journal entries, and I actually got the highest grade in the class. So I thought that was very interesting. Okay, then you reference that.
Well, and the thing is, when you break it down, and we try to help our leaders understand that even if you've done 90% of the project, falsifying information is still going to be potentially something that you could be called out for academic honesty.
I mean, I inserted pictures of plants. It was almost impossible to do.
I
That's
do
not
think
something-
that you're being recorded.
So, like some of the issues we face here, we use a program called Alex. This is a web program, and you have to complete a certain amount of objectives, a certain amount of time. Most students are pressed for time, they don't have time to do it. So what they'll do is they'll like recruit some of the tutors in the open lab, offer them to pay, hey, I'll give you $300-400, do out the objectives. That's something I've seen. Or they'll just find another student who's in a higher level math class. Like I could run through college algebra objectives maybe 2 days, I'd do like 400 objectives very easily, but I'm not gonna do that, but it's very easy for some higher math students to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to your tutors, our big thing is we want to make sure that they are educated and they understand, because all of the leaders that we have are current students. We have, I think, one student that just graduated, and so they stayed on for one more semester because they were around. But we have undergraduate students who can and still would be held to the academic honesty policy at our institution. And so we try to really hammer in the fact that if they are found responsible, especially as a paid employee of the university, that can come back to haunt them, because if they have, if they've been found responsible for a policy violation for academic integrity, that doesn't look good when they go to apply towards grad schools and things like that.
I think also in that situation, at least for us, homework is a small percentage of the grade, and if they're paying somebody to do all their homework, they're not going to pass the class because they won't pass a test. So it's like a double problem, because now the student's going to fail. So anyway.
Yeah.
Well, not directly like his example, but I've had situations where, and my concern is about the encumbering the time of our tutors, when I'll have someone that will walk into the math lab, and because of the fact that we don't have like a dedicated computer lab we have computers in our library, but when that gets filled up, then people move in, they're trying to utilize the computer, and I've had students that come in and they sign in, and then they sit down on a computer and they pull up, like let's say they pull up My Math Lab. But the interesting thing is, like I said, they may not necessarily be there for math, but now they've pulled up My Math Lab, they're doing somebody else's homework. And then they call the tutor over and ask the tutor, can you help me with this? When clearly Susie walked through the door, but it's John Doe's name on the My Math Lab, because like in the upper right hand corner it says John Doe, blah blah blah. And so how diplomatically would you massage the phraseology? It's like, look, I know that you're Susie so and so, you're not John Doe. Why are you doing this? I mean, how do?
Yeah, from our experience, I don't know that we've had that occur, but again, I would definitely make sure that my leaders are educated on the policies and understanding. I think that's the biggest piece, is that as long as this is ingrained in the beginning, it's going to sink in. And so that's the big piece. And then as far as, them calling it out, I think at that point we would encourage them to come speak to one of us. We do have signs up in our lab, so we try to create some aesthetically pleasing signage, but we do have one on student conduct within the lab, and so we have a disclaimer on there that if for some reason you are found in violation of a university policy, so if you are creating disruptive behavior, that's a policy violation, you can be asked to leave by a staff member. And it's not that you're forbidden to use the services, but at that point in time, you can be asked to leave. And so if I think we would tell our leaders, if they came across that situation, they would simply ask, that type of work cannot be done in this setting. And we would just ask that student to leave.
That's it.
Because we can't fight every battle, but at that point, we would ask them to leave.
We have a lot of, and this is true with this area in general, a lot of English as a second language learners. And so in regards to academic integrity, we have a lot of students who rely heavily on three things: copy, paste, plagiarism, cut and dry, very simple. And you'll call them out on it, and they're like, oh yeah, I did that. Like, very blunt. We also have a lot of students who will just write an entire paper on Google Translate. and hand it in, and you're looking at it going,
Oh, that's genius.
this is not, this isn't right. And then the other issue we have is, and again, the students will just say this, and it always cracks me up how honest they are. They'll have their kid write the paper or go through it for them. And, or a cousin or so-and-so wrote this for me. I worked with a student who went through all 6 levels of EAP, and he was an 1101 and couldn't write an essay, and I'm looking at him, well, what are you struggling with? Well, I've never written one before. My girlfriend wrote all my papers for me when I was in EAP. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So that kind of like, it's a different version, but it's all still with academic integrity and trying to find the guide for that. But what always kills me is how on, like, I can ask them, did you copy and paste this? Yeah. You can't do that, but why? And it's just.
But you see, that's interesting that you said, that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you said, did you copy and paste that? I feel that I cannot say that to a student. I more or less phrase it, is this, be careful with original work. Work has to be your own. Because some students will get, very defensive about that. And yes, we also work with a lot of second language learners. So there's is it really that, is it more that they lack the skills and therefore they're relying?
That's what a lot of times, but then it's still not your, that's where we have the whole thing talking about, especially with Google Translate.
Right.
Where it's still not technically your words. It is, but we need you to work through this because we need to see what your problems are, because when you write an in-class essay, you're not going to have that program next to you to help you through this, and what you were saying before, and then you're going to fail. Yeah. It kind of leads you in that direction.
I'm curious about how your Office of Student Conduct
Yeah.
deals with these things. Do you report these things to them?
So, the Office of Student Conduct at FCU is, it has to be brought to their attention by a university staff member or constituent. And so, a lot of the times it's found through Turn It In, or in the case of my student, who would come to me saying, I don't know what to do, her professor would have had to complete the paperwork to say that that was happening in his course and submit that to the Dean of Students Office. But I would say the majority of them come through Turn It In.
And is that common? Do they report these things, or do they just say?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that it's more common than not.
And what are the penalties or punishments?
They're varying, it varies based on the severity of what happened, but they have a sanctioning process that they have both the administrative sanctionings where it would be, a warning or probationary status or whatever, and then they have an educational aspect. So what are they going to have that student do to help learn from that experience? Because what they do find, and we did find this in talking to them, is that students just are not educated on the differences between paraphrasing and plagiarism. And so again, I think all of the things that you all have been talking about, it's about those teachable moments. So what we do is we utilize our leaders to, as that umbrella down. If they have one conversation with one student that helps that student have an aha moment that that's not something they should do, then I think we've had a success. Because that's what it's about. It's about having that opportunity to, we're using the people that we can train and that we can educate. And then if we have students in our classes or something that we are, working with, then sure, we can have those conversations. But by and large, our leaders are going to be the ones that are having that hands-on contact with those students. And so making sure that they are as educated as possible on it is the best form for us. So.
Making sure that we empower them with the knowledge and make them confident that they can talk to students about it and address it when they do see it, and being empowered to do that and come talk to us as well.
Do your leaders regular contact with instructors? Do they email the instructors for what's allowed, what's not allowed? Do they get their syllabus?
Oh, it's always on the syllabus.
Do they secure a syllabus for the class?
A little bit of both.
I would say a little bit of both. So for math, as an example, we had a professor who sent over information to our office saying, this is an assignment I have given. I would ask that your leaders do not help with these components. And so that comes to us, we send that out to our leaders. Now, but that would be more of an overarching thing for any of our drop-in lab leaders. Now with SI, they have very routine. They're on the Canvas page. We use Canvas at our institution, so they're made a part of that course, very embedded there. And so But beyond, I mean, our lab leaders don't necessarily have a lot of acquiring of the syllabus, but our syllabuses are on file, so we could access them if we needed to.
It's so easy to sidestep that, right? Like, I remember in my pre-cal trade class, just cheating stories, we had a take-home test, you know, he did inform the lab that, you know, it's just to get help. But some of the students in my class just copied it down on a piece of paper and gave it to the, you know.
They'll write it down on a separate sheet of paper, so now.
Oh, I have this question from class, you showed us how to do it, but I forgot, you know, can you show me some steps? You know, in math, you really don't have the tools that you have in writing, you know, turn it in, you get to see plagiarism, it's much harder to pick up on it. That's just my take.
Lindsay, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about empowering your tutors, one of the challenges that we face with tutor training, and, you know, I've been working with training, you know, tutors for over the last 5 and 6 years, it's always something, and that's empowering them. And I noticed that one of the, I think it actually came up maybe as a topic or a theme, maybe in this conference, but about assertiveness and training our tutors to be assertive. And we're starting to, you know, Shayna and I have been talking about how can we integrate that as part of tutor training at FCLCA, because no matter how much we impress upon them, you know, about their role, empowering that when you're in that situation, we want you to, and at the same time, we also want you to come to us. And it's very challenging because a lot of times either they don't want to throw anybody under the bus. They have those things with confidence and being assertive. So what is it that you all are doing to, you know, help them really empower them? And, you know, what are you doing? Because we try to be as supportive and as accessible as possible, but we still find that they don't come to us, or they just let it go, or they're just not comfortable handling those situations. And we hear it after, you know, and it becomes an issue of, well, the other tutors are helping with homework, they do it, I don't, I step, so that kind of thing. So what are you kind of?
Well, we always put a disclaimer on training. We say, because we ask that they aren't teaching the material, they're assisting, and so we say, you are not paid to be a professor here. So you're not getting a salary to do what you do, you know, so we build them up as much as possible and just work on, I think a lot of the times in one-on-one meetings, after we've, you know, done an observation. Again, we do have a training in the fall and a spring refresher, so we always try to build them up again in the spring by showing them, you know, what good work they're doing. They love to see the data, you know, they love to see how many people have come through, they love that piece. And so I think, again, it's that moraling spirit and keeping them, we try to do a lot of tutor appreciation week stuff.
And they're connected with us, keeping our door open all the time.
Yeah,
making sure that we reach out to each of them and make that connection so they do feel comfortable coming to us with anything.
Anytime one of mine calls out, and they let me know like what they're not going to be able to show up for their shift for, I make a point of putting it on my to-do list, and then like whenever that thing is. So if they had a root canal, I'll email them, hope the root canal went well, thinking about you, hope you feel better soon. Something like that. I'm just trying to make sure that they know that I'm still thinking about them. It takes about 2 minutes of my time to check my to-do list. I get to mark it off then, but making sure that they know, you know, that we're still thinking about them and that they're still humans. You know, they're still students, and we're here to develop them as well.
Good question. I noticed that you said that you use and you do observations. How does your observation form look? Do you have that to show? Like, you guys create your own observation document?
We can definitely share it with you. We don't necessarily have it here for the presentation today, but we can get that to you, and we can put that up with our information. But it's a checklist, and we've got, you know, did you do this? Did you not do this? And a lot of comment spaces to write notes. And because, you know, are they wearing their name tag? Do they have their sign out? Did they ask the student to sign in when they walked in? Are they greeting them when they walk in? Because yeah, we haven't moved to any of the e-online tutoring or anything like that. It's all face-to-face at this point, so.
And how long does your training usually last? Is it like a day? Is it like a week?
So our fall training is, for a new leader this year, will be 2.5 days. And then in the spring, it's about a half day we call it spring refresher. and we have our new leaders come in and do a few extra hours to go over some basics. But our spring hire number is a lot smaller than fall, obviously, and so.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? I think that we are early at this point, so if there are discussions or,
Oh, yes. I just wonder how many of these ethical issues end up in some cases being the difference in cultures. I think in some cultures you've discovered it's however we can best support each other and all do it and work on it together, then it's okay. Or, you know, if we can, I don't know, if you've ever been to China, you see all the rip-offs of American things that are so blatantly done, and it's okay to just copy someone else's because, you know, you're just turning it in and getting it done. It's any way to get through it, and that may not always jive with our idea of academic integrity. Have you ever found that to be an issue?
Well, I think again, it goes back to what you can create as a teachable moment. But then, you know, we all know that group learning, though, is a valuable thing. And so there is a scenario on there about, I think it was a take-home quiz, and they decided that one of them would do half the questions and the other one would do the other half. Well, that would be academically dishonest. But if they were working on them together and really trying to go through that, and the professor did not indicate that they could not do that, then that would be fine, because we did, okay, so that's another disclaimer, the Office of Student Conduct did say that a lot of these things could be debunked or would not be considered a policy violation if the professor does not put in their syllabus or mention that they shouldn't be doing it together. So, I think it's about, again, collaborating with your faculty too to find out what their expectations are. Well, we thank you all very, 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 very much for being here.